Johann Sebastyan Bax. He was born in 1685 AD in Eisenach. He was educated in his hometown and at the same time received his studies of music from his father, Johann Ambrosis, violinist by the way. After his father's death, Johann continued to study the Calvin and organ with his older brother, Johann Christoph. In 1703, he worked for a short time as a violinist in the Duke of Weimar orchestra. A few months later, he became an organist at the Ernest Church, where he began writing his first religious musical compositions. In 1770, he moved to the city of Mülheim as an organ player in its church, and after returning to Weimar, he wrote his first famous works for the organ, such as the Magna, Toccata, and Al-Fuga, Paralysis. In 1716 AD, he left Weimar to become the conductor of the chamber music ensemble for Prince Leopold in the city of Waldkotten, where the prince himself was playing the leg viola in the orchestra led by Johann Sebastyan himself. In the city, he was able to free himself from a church service, following up on composing the instruments. So he wrote most of his important works, including the 6 Mermaids of Brandenburg in 1721 AD. So named because it was dedicated to the Prince of Brandenburg. In 1723, he settled in the city of Leipzig for a quarter of a century. He made several short artistic trips to some German cities, during which he got to know the most famous musicians there at the time. He also met King Frederick the Great in 1747 AD and presented himself with a piece of music with a theme composed by the king himself. Shortly before the end of Bach's life, his eyesight gradually began to weaken until he was almost blind until his death. He was buried in St. John's Church and then transferred to the rest of his remains in 1894 AD to St. Thomas Church in loyalty and appreciation. Stages of Bach's life. He was born in March 21, 1685 in Eisenach, in the Duchy of Saxe-Weimar. In the court house overlooking Luther Square, the great religious reformer had lived his youth, and on a hill overlooking the city Warburg, the castle in which he hid from Charles, 1521, and translated the New Testament. Bach's work is alike the Protestant Reformations as a composer. His mother came when he was 9. His father died 8 months later, and Johann Sebastyan and his brother Johann Jacob joined their brother Johann Christoph's family in the gymnasium in Arizona. Sebastian received a lot of Christians teaching and some Latin. And in the Lyceum, in the nearby city of Ordov, he studied Latin, Greek, history, and music. He was ahead of his band, separated quickly, and his father had taught him the violin, and his brother Christopher had taught him the harpsichord. He passionately devoted himself to these musical studies, as if music was in his veins. He regularly copied a large number of musical compositions that were not accessible to him in full, and thus the damage to his sight began, as some think. When Sebastian was about 15, he set out to earn his living to relieve Johann Christoph's growing family. He found a job as a soprano at the Dara School of Saint Michel, Blomberg. When his voice changed, the school kept him as a violinist in the orchestra, and from Blomberg visited Hamburg, 28 miles away, perhaps to go to the opera, but certainly to hear the signs of Johann Adam Reinken, the 77 years old St. Catherine's organist. The opera didn't attract him, but the art of the organ impressed his strong and energetic spirit. The art of that lofty instrument felt a challenge to all his energy and skill. By the year 1703, he had reached such a skill in playing it that the new church in Arnstadt, near Erfurt, by the way, had to use it to play 3 times a week on the grand organ that had recently been installed in the church and which remained in use until 1863. He used his machine for his studies. He is now composing his first major work. The ambition has kept him always motivated to advance his art. It came to him that Germany's most famous organist, Dietrich, was playing Lopek, 50 miles away, a series of tunes between St. Marine's Day and Christmas in Mary's church, so he asked the council of his church for a month leave, and he granted the leave, and he delegated his cousin Johann Ernest to do his work and pay his salary. Then he left on foot to Lonek. In October 1705, left on foot to Lonek. In October 1705. We have seen Handel and Matheson make such pilgrimage. Bach wasn't attempted to marry his son Baxterhood in order to inherit a job, but he wanted to study the professor's style of playing the organ. This or something else must have impressed him, for he didn't return to Arnstadt until mid-February. On February 21, 1706, the church council rebuked him for extending his recess and for introducing strange variants in the perfect of his collective hymns. On 11 November, he was warned for failing to adequately train to choir and for secretly allowing a strange virgin to chant in the church. women were not yet allowed to chant in church. The strange girl was Maria Barbara Bach, his cousin. He made as many apologies as he could, but resigned in June 1707 and accepted the position of organist for St. Blasius Church in Manolas. And his annual salary was determined to be 85 guldens, 13 bushels of wheat, 2 cardoons of wood, 6 bundles of wood, and 3 pounds of fish, a salary considered very good for time and place. 42 in October 17, he married Maria Barbara. But his feet is that tired Molha as Arnstad. For part of the city he had been burned, and it's weirdly people were not in a state to accept these strange variations, and the people of the church were torn between the sunny Lutherans, who were fond of chanting, and the pilgrims, who believed that music was the closest thing to unbelief. The cantors complained of quas, and Bach could bring quas into order. The cantors complained of quas, and Bach could bring quas into order in melodies, not in men. When he was invited to become an organist and conductor at the court of William Ernest, Duke of Saxe-Weimar, he begged his superior to let him go. In June 1708, he moved to his new job. He was well paid in Weimar, 156 gulden per year, raised to 225 in 1713. I was now able to feed the chicks which Maria Barbara had hatched. He was not completely satisfied, as he was subject to the church organist, Johann Dries, but he benefited from the friendship of Johann Godefroy Werther, the city church organist, author of the first German musical dictionary 1732, and composer of choirs of no less quality than that of Bach's choirs. The study of French and Italian music is now very interesting thanks to Walter the educator. He loved Frescobaldi and Corelli, but was so fascinated by Vivaldi's violin concertos that he transferred 9 of them to other instruments. He would sometimes include fragments of what was reported in his tunes. We can feel the influence of Vivaldi in the Brandenburg concertos, but was also feel in them a deeper spirit and richer art. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment to our channel on YouTube. Thank you.